clearly it's not overshadowing things, is it? Because things seem to be going very, very well at the moment.
Yeah, I think, without going into it at all, there's, in my experience in football clubs, anything that's off the field never has overshadowed what goes on the field, to be honest with you. So, but we're doing okay.
Is it difficult to try and keep people's feet on the ground, given the magnitude and the reaction to that result on Sunday?
I don't think it's difficult. I think footballers are very resilient in themselves anyhow. I think, immediately they're coming in, straight after it, there's a euphoria, there's bound to be that. Not just because of who it was against, not just because of what the scoreline was, but because of where we sit at this moment in time, but only after 9 games. But I think that, straight after it as well, I think the manager, both in terms of his media stuff that he did and also in the dressing room, was saying that, it's 3 points like any other game. I think it's hard initially, but I think that when you get into the training ground the day afterwards, players loosen off, they have the massage, they have the baths and what have you, they go out, they've got a day off today, they'll come in tomorrow, they'll do their physical work tomorrow like they would do anything. They don't get a bonus by not doing that physical work, and then they'll be preparing for a game at the weekend. Or a lot of them will be preparing for a game at the weekend. Some of them will be preparing for a game tomorrow night. So I think you've always got to put your football boots back on, and it's always 0-0 when you start another game. So I think it's something that would be at the back of his mind, to make sure that we actually don't let what happened at the weekend take away any focus on what the position is in hand at this moment in time, and that's to progress in the Carling Cup.
There's so many headlines about Mario in the last week or so. Is his talent really starting to show through now, do you think?
Well, I think his talent showed anyhow. I think people saw his talent, but they perhaps saw it in fleeting moments last season. He had, not to give any excuses, but it is difficult to go into another country. He is only young. He did have his niggles last year in terms of injuries and things. I think what's happened this season, there's a consistency in terms of the amount of time he's on the training pitch. That those niggles seem to have bypassed him. There's a consistency in terms of, there was a consistency in terms of off the field stories that went on, and there's certainly a consistency in his performances and his concentration, I would say, rather than his behaviour, but his concentration, because his behaviour's always been good. It's been concentration levels, I think, that have, there's been too many ups and downs in terms of his concentration levels, but they're there and have been, and I think people have said it, they've been there for a good 2 to 3 months.
Because the manager last week described him as crazy. How do you see him?
Perhaps hasn't got a full vocabulary of English, otherwise. I've always said I don't think he's a difficult player to manage in that sense. He's not somebody that sulks as such. He'll lose concentration, but you can snap him straight back out of it. And I think that's why it's always been up and down. But it's not been it's been almost immediately up and down. It's not been up and down in terms of, he's down for a week and then he's up and what have you. He'd be down for 10 seconds and then he's out of it. He's an enigma.
The model of consistency, I suppose, by contrast, has been in David Silva. Consistent, great displays week in, week out. There's talk even now of him being named as Player of the Year. Considering the great players that you've seen and played with over your career and since you've been in management, how does he compare to some that you've seen before?
Well, we see it on a daily basis. There's no doubt about it. The boys, since he came into the football club, I think you saw it in training. We saw it in training straight away. That just his ability to always be in and around the ball, to not give it away, it's almost tied to his feet at times. He releases it at the right time. He plays the game very, very simple. I think it took him time, a little bit of time, not a massive amount of time, but a little bit of time when he came in. But I think that was by virtue of the fact that he came out of a World Cup where he'd not played too much in that World Cup, and then he'd had some time off. And I think the first time he came into the football club, we were probably 10 days away from starting the season. So it probably took a month, 6 weeks for him to just, get to a level of fitness, of physical fitness, I think, to be able to compete. He is one exceptional player, I think. I think it's, like you say, it's very early to start talking about players being Player of the Year. You know, there's a lot to go in the season. There's a lot of very, very good players that are also doing well this season. So I don't think it's the right thing to start turning around and saying he's Player of the Year. Equally, I would turn around and I'll be very surprised if the consistency of his performances went down. Because we see, as I say, you see it on a daily basis. You know.
Are we likely to see a raft of changes for this game, you say?
Yeah, there will be, but not to say that we don't give it equal attention to what every game that we go in. You know, what the manager's is somebody that wants to win all 4 trophies. You know, I mean, I couldn't believe last year when we got knocked out at West Brom. I couldn't believe how disappointed he was when we got knocked out at West Brom last year, because to him, he wants to win a trophy. I think where we are this year, we've shown that we've rotated the squad. We don't have a Premier League team, we don't have a Champions League team, we don't have a Carling Cup team. We have 20 odd players that he can pick as he sees fit to go into a football match and win it. And I think there are players that are playing in that will be playing on Wednesday night. Would feature next week against Villarreal in the Champions League as well. So we don't have 2 teams, we have a squad of players to affront the 4 competitions that we're in.
Kolo Toure, is he happy as far as you're concerned at the moment? Because there's some quotes knocking around that he might be.
Yeah, to be honest, I saw the quotes. I think whether they're attributed, whether he said them or he hasn't said them, whether they've been taken out of context, I think it's neither here nor there. You know, I think Kolo's a top player. We're delighted to have him back. And every time we discuss a team to play, and I'll go back to my last answer, every time we discuss a team, it's not a case of, well, we have Kolo Toure here because he's a Carling Cup player, because he'll help us win the Carling Cup. It's not the case, you know. I mean, I think, the belief that the manager had in him as well showed when he put him in the side against Bayern Munich. You know.
Just finally from me, Mick McCarthy was there on Sunday, I understand, at Old Trafford. I mean, even if there are going to be
probably left by the time the 90th minute.
Even though there's probably going to be a good few changes, I mean, what on earth must be going through his mind at the moment after a display like that?
Well, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how Mick's got his own squad of players and how he affronts the competition and what he does with it, because we saw them at the weekend myself and Roberto went down. But it's a difficult one when you're actually looking at to see what the opposition's going to be like in terms of personnel in there. It's a difficult one to call because we're not in the dressing room and things. In the 2 games that he's had so far in the Carling Cup, he's mixed it round himself. He may well do that again. You'd have to ask him the question, but I think he'll be confident in his players to put in a good workman-like performance. They'll never give in, Wolves. I mean, we arrived at Molineaux just 10 minutes in. They scored 2 goals. They were 2-0 down against Swansea. We'd disappeared by the time they got back, and they were under a lot of crowd pressure, I think, in that second half on Saturday. But it just shows you what he can instill in his players and the belief that his players have got, that they can come back from that. They've got a great deal of character. We're not going down there thinking they've been losing games, they haven't won for a while, or they might put a team out that might not be necessarily the same team that he'll put out on Saturday against us in the league. But we'll expect a very, very difficult game because we know that they'll be up, they'll be at us, and they'll be in our faces. So I don't think we'll take them with any kind of pinch of salt at all,
David, you talk about Mario finding consistency now. Was there a turning point where it sort of started to click there? People talk maybe about the Dynamo Kiev game last season when he was sent off, and he seems to have really picked his game up since then.
I think it would be. I don't think there's been a turning point. I just think it's happened, and you'd have to ask him the question of whether he thinks there's a turning point and what have you. I just know that in the last 2 or 3 months, I think we've seen it. We haven't. There's been a consistency about his whole demeanour, training, off field, everything.
Would it be fair to say that tomorrow night's game is a very good opportunity for Owen Hargreaves to get 90 minutes in?
It would be. I don't think he will. He's got a little kick, so he's not going to play for him.
He's not.
No.
Not going to play then.
David, as somebody who's played in this country and abroad, there have been a couple of interesting incidents in the last couple of weeks about is racism coming back in with Suarez and Evra and then John Terry and Ferdinand at the weekend. Are those just aberrations? Have you noticed it? Is it on the increase, decrease, or is it simply not around in football?
The only way I've noticed it is because it's been reported in the press, but I think there's still things going on there. I don't know what's been said, what's not been said. For me, it's, you know, I don't think anybody condones it, I don't think the players condone it, but there's still investigations going on into that. So I don't really have an opinion, to be honest with you. I can't have an opinion because I don't know what's happened and whether it's been proven.
But generally, in what you see, it's not as bad as it was maybe when you were playing. I'm talking.
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I was playing, I'm not that old. I mean, when I was playing, it wasn't apparent when I was playing either. Really, I mean, clearly we've all played in games when it's come from the terraces, but yeah. I've never experienced it on a pitch.
David, how much of a sense is there at the club that Sunday's result was a landmark result for the club, in terms of a lot of people saying that City were a team of individuals rather than a collective?
So I don't think Sunday's result means anything in terms of what you're saying there, that it's a landmark result. We were aware that for a long period of time that the team has come together towards the end of last season. I think the players started to realise what other players in the team did. David Silva is a point in question that David roams around the football pitch. We can't turn around and say we can give him a starting position, but we know that he's going to move around the football pitch, and we have to cover that by the other players, so that when we do lose the ball, if he's not in his position that he should start in, we have to cover that. And I think the players realised that towards the end of last season. I think they got, not just about David Silva, about each other, the characteristics of each player and how they gelled and what have you. So I think they became, as I said, from January onwards, they started to get better and better and better. From being able to label at them that it was a team of individuals, which is, that's no criticism of them. There was a lot of players that changed hands that came into the place and had to learn about the other people's characteristics. But I don't think we look at Sunday and say, well, there you go, we told you so, or anything like that. Sunday was a game where, and the manager said it, we've won the game, we've won well, there's a magnitude about it because it's a local derby. We can't really control what's written and what's said about that because of the size of the game that it was. But what we can control is just where we are and how we go forward. And I don't think you can say that just because of Sunday now, the team will go on and it's no longer individuals, because we've thought that for a period.
In terms of the result of the week, in terms of the result of the weekend, and obviously going forward and the FA Cup win last season, how hungry now is this team that they go on and win more and win things consistently year after year after year?
I think there's a hunger there for success. Yeah, I think it's there in the players. I think you see that. I think there's a belief in them that they can do it. I know that the manager's greedy. He wants everything. So there's a desire for him. All he knows is winning. All he wants to do is win.